Hello and welcome to the third part of the video lecture for the Unit 2, so which is the What is Interaction Design. So we'll continue on discussing the subtopic Process of Interaction Design. Okay, so Linus Pauling, twice a Nobel Prize winner, once said, "So the best way to get a good idea is to get lots of ideas." So generating lots of ideas is not necessarily hard, but choosing which one of them to pursue is more difficult. So within the researches nga nakuha ta from users or data nakuha ta from researches, so that will generate ideas. So then based on that idea, so makapili ta a specific idea that can address a problem, then go forward. So getting the balance requires experience, but it also requires the development and evaluation of alternative solutions. So generating alternatives is a key principle in most design disciplines and one that is also central in to interaction design. So hindi ka na magpili or mag-generate sang idea, so mapili ka sang best nga idea, but at the same time mapili ka sang alternatives. Alternatives so that in case your first idea is not really viable o hindi man siya ma-implement, so pwede may other ideas ka pa or alternative ideas na pwede kantuan. So si Tom Kelly described the 7 secrets for successful brainstorm, so including sharpening the focus. So this is by having a well-honed problem statement. So define yun ang problem, so ang specific into the specifics, having playful rules, so in order to encourage these ideas, and getting physical. So using visual props, so that can stimulate more the brain maybe, or mas ma-curious man na mas ma-engage man na ma-engage ang upod mo, or ang team, that team or the designers in developing that idea. So involving users and others in the design process means that the designs and potential solutions will need to be communicated to people other than the original designer. So, makommunicate na sila, makuwagin sila information to other people. So people that are experts. So this requires the design to be captured, expressed in a form that allows review, revision, and then improvement. So damo ni siya way nga pwede obrahon, but one of the simplest being is to produce a series of sketches. Kung mag-sketch ka na sa mga sang sketch mo na ang possible na flow sa aton nga possible nga user experience or user interaction. So other common approaches are to write a description in natural language. So mag-draw ka na of series of diagrams. So the series of diagrams, so that diagrams are your user, or the flow of the user experience, or the flow of the tasks, and then to build a prototype that is a limited version of the final product. So prototyping. So ma-prototype ka na, ma-build ka na sang sample application, sang sample or bare bone application. So that can be proof of evidence nga ga-work ang imong idea. So combination of these techniques is likely to be most effective. So when users are involved, so capturing and expressing a design in a suitable format, especially important since they are unlikely to understand jargon or specialist notations. So design principles are used by interaction designers to aid their thinking when designing for the user experience. So, ga-follow man sila sang principles. I-follow na sila para makabulig sa maka-create sang idea, so makabulig na sa development or sa pag-design sang interaction. So, these are generalized or generalizable abstractions intended to orient designers toward thinking about different aspects of their designs. So a well-known example is feedback. Diba? Feedback is So product should be designed to provide adequate feedback to the users that informs them about what has already been done so that they know what to do next in the interface. So feedback is feedback to the users. So ma-warn ka about something or i-notify mo si users. So or feedback that you can achieve that by sounds maybe or by displaying messages or pop-ups, etc. So dapat pabalutan na. So inform. So amo na importance ng feedback is to inform. So another one that is important in is findability. So this refers to the degree to which a particular object is easy to discover or locate. So findability. So feedback and then findability. So easy for objects such as the buttons, your text field. So easy to discover na siya. So hapos na siya makita ni user. So kung mag-navigate siya sa website, so hapos lang man-navigate So maklik lang sang 2 or 3 buttons or minimum of 1 button maybe in order to navigate to that website. So moving through a building or finding the delete image option on the digital camera. So dapat hapos na siya hapos na siya pangitaan ang set or components in order to trigger a function. Okay, so a number of design principles have been promoted. So the best known are concerned with how to determine what users should see and do when carrying out the task using an interactive product. So here we briefly describe the most common ones. So we have the visibility, the feedback, the constraints, consistency, and affordance. Okay, so design principles. So these principles, though ma-notice nyo, is familiar, diba, sa previous nga unit kay yes, so familiar is consistency, may constraints, may so i-discuss na siya. So visibility. So the importance of this visibility is exemplified by contrasting examples at the beginning of the chapter. So the voicemail, ang example nga to in describing or in differentiating a good and poor design, so made the presence and the number of waiting messages invisible while the answering machine made both aspects highly visible. So the marble answering machine, so visible na ang number of waiting messages, but on the voicemail ang gabling to nga phone, so hindi ta mabalaan kung pila to ang waiting messages. So visible na ang may visible na nga objective or visible nga objective or goal sang user. So si Don Norman to describe the control of a car to emphasize this point. So the controls for different operations are clearly visible. So posto may indicators headlights, horn, hazardous warning. So control siya, maybe ang buttons for the left and right nga turn indicators, button para mag-on sang headlights, magbusina, hazard warning lights indicating what can be done. So ma-view, makita niya dayon sang driver kay syempre these are important so makita niya so when they are driving. So this is an example na siya on how to use the automatically controlled faucet. So this one. So for what is normally an everyday and well-learned activity. So maybe some nagkatuwa ako sa ibang lugar nga have this type of faucet. So it also states that the faucets cannot be operated if wearing black clothing. So may sensor siya dire. And then in the sensor kung wala na siya sang taxi, so hindi ta mabalaan or mabudlayan ka na operate sang faucet. But here, so mayara siya text that is visible to the users man siya on how to operate this. So mayara to turn on, walk up the sink, to turn off, walk away from the sink. So kung mag-stand ka lang malapit sa faucet, so ma-on siya automatically. So muna go-operate siya giging may visible siya nga may visible siya nga explanation on how to operate this. So it does not explain, however, what to do if you are wearing black clothing. So increasingly highly visible controlling devices like knobs, buttons, and switches, which are intuitive to use, have been replaced by invisible and ambiguous activating zones where people have to guess where to move their hands, bodies, or feet on, into, and in front of, so to make them work. So that is for the visibility. So next is the feedback. So related niya siya to the concept of visibility is the feedback. So this is best illustrated by an analogy to what everyday life would be like without it. So imagine trying to play a guitar, slicing a bread using a knife, or writing using a pen if none of the actions produce. So there would be no unbearable delay before the music was produced, the bread was cut, or the words appeared on the paper, so making it impossible for the person to continue with the next strum, cut, or stroke, or any effect for several seconds. So may feedback in siya. So when someone is playing guitar, so slicing a bread, so may feedback na siya nga katabo. So when maybe trying to slice a bread, so may sound ganda when the knife touches the end of the cutting board. So may feedback ta nga mabalaan. So that means maybe nakat na ang bread. So feedback involves sending back information about what action has been done and what has been accomplished. So when we're cutting, so the end of that at some time, kung maglabot na ang end sang kutsilyo sa cutting board, kung malabot yan so may sound, sometimes may sound kung tama ka doon, so may sound na. So that is the feedback. So allowing the person to continue with the activity. So meaning, once nga mabatian niya to, or ma-receive na sang user ang feedback from the actions that they are doing, so meaning, they are maka-decide as user or mabalaan ng user if the actions that they be doing is done or may natabo bandang error, for example. So various kinds of feedback are available for interaction design, so audio, tactile, verbal, visual, and or combination of these. So most commonly nisa is the audio. So other example is the dial tones for your phone. So when trying to call someone, so when clicking a button, so may mabatian na kamo nga beep. So beep or tone for that buttons. So meaning, kung once mabatian na, so meaning ang number is nag-register na or nag-input na kamo or successful na ang input niya. So deciding which combinations are appropriate for different types of activities and interactivities is central. So dapat i-prepare mo na or i-design mo na ang sakto nga feedback. Ang feedback nga mas comfortable na sa users. So using feedback in the right way can also provide the necessarily visibility for user interaction. So if your feedback pop-ups na siya for mobile applications or may notifications or may suga man na masiga, for example, so that can be a visibility. So constraints. So the design concepts of constraining refers to determining the ways of restricting the kinds of user interaction that can take place in a given moment. So sometimes, hindi i-limit mo na lanay ang things to do sa user. Kung damo ka man da button, so i-limit mo na at that specific time. So users can only this and this. So other functionalities are out of reach for users. So a common design practice in graphical user interfaces is to deactivate certain menu options by shading them in gray. So gina-disable na ang buttons, thereby restricting the user only to actions permissible at the stage of that activity. So, limited lang ilang actions. So, one of the advantages of this form of constraining is that it prevents the user from selecting incorrect options and thereby reducing the chances of making a mistake. So, muna ang purpose ng constraining is most likely to prevent users from doing mistakes. So, this one right there. So, in this application right here, so when on the arrange menu, so what the user can do right now is just rotate, flip, align, or distribute, and then reorder objects. So they cannot bring to front, maybe send to back, or group. They did not, ang user did not yet meet the requirement objective. So, gina-constraint. So, gina-limit tala na siya. Kung, for example, kung available ni siya, so, maklik ni siya si bring to front, so, that can cause some errors. So, next is we have consistency. So, this refers to the designing interfaces that have similar operations and uses similar elements to achieving similar tasks. So, ang similar operations that are related man na siya. So, related operations, so, dumayan na siya. May same man nga buttons, same man nga functionalities, or same man nga tasks. So, in particular, a consistent interface is one that follows rules, such as using the same operation to select all objects. Kung ba mag-select ka sang all objects, may similar operations ka na pwede mo obra, such as similar is may click ka lang a button or different man ang options. So, inconsistent interfaces, on the other hand, allow exceptions to a rule. So, an example is where certain graphical objects, so email messages presented in a table, can be highlighted only by using a right mouse button, while other operations are highlighted using a left mouse button. So, for copying na siya for highlighting, yes. So, one of the benefits of consistent interface, therefore, is that they are easier to learn and use. So, muna ang advantage of consistent interfaces, easier to learn and use kay na-familiarize na si user sa ibang one interface or one nga user interface. Then, when they're trying to another interface, so ma-familiar na sila. So, hindi na sila study, hindi nila pag-i-lantawon o pag-check ito ng functionalities. Users have to learn only a single mode of operation that is applicable to all objects. So, this principle works well for simple interfaces with limited operations, such as a portable radio with small number of operations mapped onto separate buttons. So, muna, ang obra na ni user is to learn what each button represents and select accordingly. So, however, it can be more problematic to apply the concept of consistency to more complex interfaces. So, there is not enough space. Sa example sa radio nga damo sang button, so there is not enough space for 1,000 buttons, so each of which maps to an individual operation. So even if there were, so it will be extremely difficult and time consuming for the users to search through all of them to find a designed operations. So a much more effective design solution is to create categories of commands that can be mapped into subsets of operations that can be displayed at interfaces, so via menus. So muna ang sa previous, some of the applications, so may ara sila menu options or menu interfaces. So in order to remove some of the or to relegate some of the functionalities into just one button. So, amo man sa mga radios nga may mga complex functionality, so gina-relegate lang nila sa menu na buttons. Amo man sa TV, sa mga remotes may ara sila menu. Then we have affordance. So this is a term to refer to an attribute of an object that allows people to know how to use it, to know how to use a specific na object. So for example, a mouse clicking invites pushing. Pushing by the way it is physically constrained in its plastic shell. So si mouse, so pag hambalan ta si user nga i-push na ang button para mag-activate ang click. So at a simple level, so to afford means to give a clue. So sa mouse gahatag ta clue on clicking the left mouse here para mag-trigger ang click or activate the click function. So when the affordances of a physical object are perceptually obvious, it is easy to know how to interact with it. So kung ma-afford sang user nga mabalaan niya dayon paano na magamit. So we have other examples like door handling affords pulling, diba? So a cup handle affords grasping, so mag-grasp siya, and then a mouse button affords pushing. So the term has been much popularized in interaction design, being used to describe how interfaces should make it obvious, as with the principle of affordance, as to what can be done when using them. So with the mouse, so by just clicking, by pushing, diba? So ma-trigger na ang functionalities yan. So Don Norman suggests that there are two kinds of affordance. So we have perceived and real. So physical objects are said to have real affordances, diba? Real affordances, so real nga actions like grasping that are perceptually obvious and do not have to be learned. So in contrast, user interfaces that are screen-based are virtual and do not have this kind of real affordances. So using this distinction, he argues that it does not make sense to try to design for real affordances at the interface. So when designing the user interface for applications, so dito na try to design for real affordance. So except when designing physical devices. So alternatively, so screen-based interface are better conceptualized as perceived affordances. So among niyang types ng affordance nga try ta i-follow. So when we're designing screen-based interface, so virtually, so in behind screens, so monitors, etc. So which are essentially learned conventions. So however, watching a 1-year-old swiping smartphone screens, zooming in and out on images with the finger and thumb, and touching menu options suggests that kind of learning comes naturally. So we have the real is to do obvious and don't have to be learned, while the perceive is learned convention. So ma-invest ng users sometime in order to achieve that functionality. Then we have applying design principles in practice. So one of the challenges of applying more than one of the design principles in interaction design is the trade-offs that can arise among them. So mayroon tayong example, the more you try to constrain an interface, the less visible information becomes. So the more nga ma-constrain ka sa buttons, ma-constrain ka sa components nila, so less visible information ang available sa user. So the same can also happen when trying to apply a simple design principle. So kung mag-apply ka lang sa more an interface is designed to afford through or trying to resemble the way a physical object looks, the more it can become cluttered and difficult to use. So dapat mix and match na ang design principles. So when trying to develop a user experience. So it can also be the case that the more an interface is designed to be aesthetic, so ma-focus ta sa so maybe sa visibility, the less visibility becomes. Consistency can be problematic design principle, trying to design an interface to be consistent with something that can make it inconsistent with something else. So furthermore, sometimes inconsistent interfaces are actually easier to use than consistent interface. So this is illustrated na siya by the classic of the Jonathan Grudin, with the use of the analogy of where knives are stored in the house. So knives come in variety of forms, so including butter knives, steak knives, table knives, and then fish knives. So damo na siya sizes, damo na sila purpose. So an easy place to put them all and subsequently locate them is in the top drawer by the sink. So this makes them easy for everyone to find. Then follows a simple consistent rule. Pero what about the knives that don't fit or are too sharp to put in the drawer? So may man types of knives ba nga delikado na siya o tama na siya kadako. So they are placed in a wooden block. And what about the best knives kept only for special occasions? So they are placed in cabinets in another room for safekeeping. So what about the knives man like putty knives or paint scraping knives? So these are also knives used in home improvement projects. So ginatago na sila sa garage. And then jackknives. So jackknives, this can be your small knives such as the survival knives, etc. So these are kept in one's pocket or backpack. So very quickly, the consistency rules begins to break down. So hindi kay damo ta na categories for a specific na product such as the knives. Okay, so that ends the video lecture for Unit 2. So I hope you've learned something. Thank you for watching and have a great day.